Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Flynn, and it's my great honor to be the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Simsbury Free Library. And on behalf of the board, our staff, our members, I'd like to welcome you all to this very special occasion, the groundbreaking of the Martin Luther King in Connecticut Memorial. I'd like to begin the process by asking Grace and Mary Kate Stewart to sing the National Anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I offer Dr. King's own words. Let us pray. O God, we thank you for the fact that you have inspired men and women in all nations and in all cultures. We call you different names. Some call you Allah. Some call you Elohim. Some call you Jehovah. Some call you Brahma. Some call you the unmoved mover. But we know that these are all names for one and the same God. Grant that we will follow you and become so committed to your way and your kingdom that we will be able to establish in our lives and in this world a brother and sisterhood, that we will be able to establish here a kingdom of understanding where men and women will live together as brothers and sisters and respect the dignity and worth of every human being. In the name and spirit of Jesus, amen.
Amen.
First, I'd like to recognize some special guests here this afternoon. Our Congresswoman Estes here, Elizabeth Estes, our State Senator Kevin Witkos, our State Representative John Hampton, and I might add that John is also the chair of the annual MLK in Simsbury Celebration Committee. From our town government, we have First Selectman Eric Wellman and Board of Selectmen members Cheryl Cook and Mike Payne. And happy to say Mike Payne is one of our library board members also. From the educational community, we have the Superintendent of Schools, Matt Curtis, the Assistant Superintendent, Erin Murray, and gentleman who I believe is the HR Director these days, but at the time when this project got started was actually the principal of Simsbury High School, Neil Sullivan. Say a few words about the Simsbury Free Library. It was established in 1874 as an institution through the generous contribution of a man named Amos R. Eno, and his picture and his bust are here gracing this beautiful room. In 1890, Mr. Eno donated the land we're standing on and the building we're standing in, and in effect, the Simsbury Free Library, which has always been a private foundation, became the public library for Simsbury. Fast forward through the decades, Simsbury grew to the point where a private foundation couldn't really handle a library function, so the town took it over and our beautiful public library is down the street. At that time, the Simsbury Free Library changed from being a library of general circulation to a research library primarily, and research in the areas of genealogy and history. But we also strove to become a cultural center for the town. And we do that through all sorts of activities we have going on here, book clubs and movies and discussion groups and author events, et cetera, et cetera. One of the best things we ever did in terms of outreach was to connect with the Simsbury schools, and in particular with Simsbury High School, because we started to work with Richard Curtis, and I'm happy to say a member of our board these days, and with Mr. Curtis's help, we had a number of projects with the high school kids, great seminars here on the Great Depression and World War II, had the veterans in to meet the high school kids, that kind of thing. They made a film about a historic train wreck. But it really reached an apex, I think, in 2010. Because in the summer of 2010, Mr. Curtis and 16 high school students spent a lot of their time in this building and doing field research centered from this building to track down the, as someone has called it, the suburban myth that Martin Luther King was actually in Simsbury. I think that was a known fact, but not a lot else was known about it. Well, these young people went to work, and they actually recorded hundreds of hours of taped interviews, several with people, elderly citizens in Simsbury and in Hartford who knew Dr. King as a youth. Unfortunately, they've all passed away in the interim. And reviewed probably thousands of pages of documents and really answered the questions. He was here, and more importantly, what effect did that have on him? And the answer was a very profound one. So that film was a great success. It became the centerpiece of the statewide celebration of the Martin Luther King holiday, a grand gala dinner with the governor and the senators and lots of people who are from the community and members of the Martin Luther King support groups to recognize that holiday. And that might have been the end of it, but the spirit of these kids was greater than that. And they said, you know, we have to keep this thing rolling. And they came up with the idea of a memorial that would take the ideas from the film and translate them to something more tangible that would last and be around for others to enjoy and to learn from. And so the project began. And since that time, that original group of students has moved on, although I'm really pleased to say we have several now college graduates who were undergraduates in 2010, but they passed the torch to their classmates that came after. And I'd like to call upon two of those people right now, Brakina Grishevsky and Bronwyn Mock.
The documentary that these students created received national acclaim and was on CBS News' Eye on America. But the students saw this as just the beginning. In 2011, these students dedicated themselves to building a memorial to honor Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. and keep his dream alive. We want this memorial to be a place where people can come and learn about his mission and the time he spent here. But most importantly, we want this to be a place where people can sit and reflect and learn about his mission and think about their own mission in life. We especially want students to come to this memorial and be inspired by Dr. King. King was in his teenage years a student at Morehouse College when he came to Simsbury to work on the tobacco fields and wrote about the integrated environment here in Connecticut. To think that such a great leader was moved by an environment that we take for granted for today is extraordinary. He changed society not just in the United States, but all around the globe, with his nonviolent movement against racism. This memorial serves to educate people about the struggle that existed and still exists today to obtain equal rights and how Dr. King dedicated his life to change that.
This memorial includes a series of 5 glass panels that each discuss different aspects of his youth. The first panel discusses how Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to live and work in Simsbury. The second panel quotes from letters written by Dr. King himself about attending interracial church services here. The third and center panel describes how he became the religious leader of his workplace, preaching every Sunday to the other students. The fourth panel describes his departure from Connecticut and return back home to Atlanta to a segregated way of life. The final panel describes Dr. King's life and legacy. The entry and exit markers are located at the south side and the north side of the memorial, respectively, in order to convey Dr. King's journey from the south to the north. These markers will be made from brownstone, a native stone to Connecticut that is used in many of Simsbury's important buildings. On all of the panels, the written text appears to flow unsupported. The glass was chosen to reflect the idea that his words are not meant to be bound by walls, but to be read, understood, and open to the whole community. None of this would have happened without many people supporting us. At this time, I would like to invite Maeve Willerup and Ashika Diapa to thank those who have helped us to reach these groundbreaking events.
Hello, everyone. We are so excited to bring this memorial to life as a permanent fixture to honor Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., and this certainly wouldn't have been able to happen without the help of our sponsors. We want to give a huge thank you to our platinum sponsors, the Wagner Family Foundation, the Cigna Health Insurance, our gold sponsor, the Chubb Specialty Insurance Group, our silver sponsors, Comfort Solutions by King Coil, Mass Mutual Finance Group, Sigma Pi Phi Beta Iota Boule, our bronze sponsors, Michelle Auto Group, Hickson Beals Fund, Westminster School, Teals Marsh Foundation, Northeast Utilities CLMP, Ensign Bickford, Simsbury Bank, Valisis Direct Mail, Rogo Distributors, Alan S. Goodman, Alpha Psi Boule, the Cannon family, the Heller family, Brian Sullivan, and Dale Necht. We also want to thank those who donated their talents, time, and energy to bring us all here today, including Richard Curtis, the teacher who inspired us and students before us, and Jay Willerup, the architect who translated their ideas into this beautiful memorial. Thank you, everyone.
Well, before we go to the shovels, I believe we have a proclamation from Congresswoman Esty. If you would, Congresswoman?
Well, it's an exciting day to be here to celebrate youth and inspiration. I was in Africa last week, including in South Africa, which was so inspired by the work of Dr. Martin Luther King. And to think that the young people in this community are carrying on that tradition of being inspired about the possibility for a better world. And I'm delighted that everyone is here, that the young people of Simsbury were inspired by a library to learn, research, find out facts, and then translate that into something that will endure beyond our lives to inspire future generations. So this is a certificate of special congressional recognition presented to the Martin Luther King in Connecticut Memorial Committee. Congratulations on today's groundbreaking. This day was a long time in the making, and it's thanks to many dedicated individuals and organizations, including students, researchers, donors, and supportive members of the community, that this memorial is becoming a reality. The Reverend Martin Luther King in Connecticut Memorial will ensure that all residents learn about the time Reverend King spent in Simsbury and the lasting impact his time here had on his life and work. Thank you for your commitment to Reverend King and his legacy, and thank you for reminding all of us about the possibility we each have to see injustice and correct it, and to be an inspiration for others. Congratulations. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to call upon our first selectman, Eric Wellman.
Thank you. I am so pleased to be here today. On behalf of the town, I want to say how proud I am of the students who are here today and who have been part of this effort over the past 8 or 9 years. To Mr. Curtis and all educators who instill a passion for learning to our children, I say thank you. And I am appreciative to all of the donors and the people who gave their time and money where this would not have been possible without their help. I think about a quote from Dr. King, where he said, "Our lives begin to end when we become silent about things that matter. And thinking about that quote today in 2018, it is my hope that this memorial serves as a reminder so that when we recognize that the civil rights movement is not some relic of a bygone era, but instead is something that is very much alive today. A struggle for equality and justice is something that we need to continue to fight for and keep at the fore, and it's my hope that this memorial serves as a reminder for just that. Again, congratulations, and thank you for having me today.
I'd like to hand out the shovels now, and I'd like the first shovel to go to Rick Wagner. I hope Rick is here. Okay, Rick didn't make it. He was coming from North Carolina, but I will add that Rick and his family have been very big supporters of the town in general and this library in particular. Both he and his father, the late Dick Wagner, were board members here, and the Wagner Family Foundation, I believe, is our largest single donor for this project. Certainly Mr. Curtis deserves a shovel. Rich. And we have several people who were part of those high school years in 2010 who are now gone on to college and gone through that. We'll start with the sisters Maggie and Taylor Wilrup. And a young man who was extremely instrumental in making the film, John Connor Malley, is back with us. And of course, Jay Wilrup, the architect of the project, who I think if he'd actually build us, we'd have that size of Ghana or someplace. But thank you, Jay. Mike Gerard is here. Mike's going to be our general contractor on the project. And what's the reverse of in loco parentis? There was another young lady called Nikki Byer who was a tremendous contributor along with John Connor Malley to getting this done, really the leaders of the student team. And I believe her parents, Steve and Sue, are here. Oh, they were. Oh, they are. Well, you have to grab a shovel. Sorry.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.